Morning, all. All right, so I want to start things off today looking at the Pacific Division. I want to do a video on each division. I'm wearing Vancouver because they're the division leader. Who are the other division leaders? Well, we'll talk about that when we get to those other divisions. So, Vancouver leads the Pacific, which is not something I felt like I was going to be saying this season. And I think even the most ardent supporters of the Canucks at the start of the season wouldn't have been saying, well, we're going to be first in the division at Christmas. And yet here they are 23 9 and 3, 49 points. They're 700 points percentage, tied with LA for the best one in the division. Their MVP to me, anyways, has been Quinn Hughes. I think he's been their most consistent player. He eats so many minutes, and he is so good on the blue line. Right now, as the number one seed in the West, they would face the second wild card, which would be Arizona. So, how interesting would that series be? I have no idea what would happen there. Now, to keep an eye on their upcoming schedule, they do have a 7-game road trip coming up in January. And every team in this division has an interesting stretch of games coming up, which may end up favoring Vegas in the short term. We'll see what it does in the long term, because Vegas has a bunch of games coming up at home. But Vancouver's 7-game road trip, there's some East Coast games in there too. And very often with the Vancouver Canucks, that's been where their season has fallen off when they haven't been a playoff team, where their season's been broken by that trip. Now that they're the number one seed in the West, will that be different? So far, when they've taken those road trips east of the Rockies, they've actually done pretty well this year. So maybe this year they change that narrative. Maybe that 7-game road trip ends up being the reason that they end up finishing first in the division at the end of the season. Then you do have Vegas, 21 9 and 5 overall, 47 points, 671 points percentage. They have a stretch coming up with 8 out of 10 at home. And they're very good at home. Beating them at T-Mobile's no easy feat. And of course, they have the January 1st game in Seattle, which is an outdoor game. And honestly, when it's an outdoor game like that, I don't necessarily think home ice advantage means a lot, because both teams are pretty hyped to be out there. So yeah, and that's one of the 2 games on the road out of that stretch. So it's going to be interesting to see how things go for Vegas in the new year. The LA Kings, as mentioned, have the same points percentage as Vancouver. They are 19 7 and 4 overall, 42 points for them. They have an upcoming 6-game road trip. The MVP to me for them has been Anze Kopitar. Now, you can make an argument for Fiala, you can make an argument for Kempe, you can make an argument for Doughty, you can make an argument for a lot of players. And one thing that all 3 teams at the top of this division have in common is you can make an argument for a number of MVPs. You can make an argument for Marchessault. You can make an argument for Aiden Hill when he was in there. You can make an argument for Pietrangelo for all the minutes he munches. Up here with Vancouver, you can make the argument for Pettersson. You can make that as well for Miller and for Thatcher Demko. So all of these teams have a lot of guys going. And for LA, of course, you have Cam Talbot too. So it's been quite the story with these 3. And then there's this huge divide. There's 9 points between the LA Kings and the Calgary Flames beneath them, who are 14, 15, and 5, 485 points percentage. So there is a big separation between the non-playoff and playoff teams. Now, Calgary's currently 3 points out of a playoff spot behind that second wildcard Arizona. If it was Vancouver-Calgary in the first round, just saying, that'd be fun. So for Calgary, they have where they'll play 6 out of 7 on the road, and then they have a 6-game homestand. So it'll be interesting to see again if the road games go well, then you come home and you're all set and cooled. Some teams do well with extended road trips and homestands, some not as much. And again, with the Kings, you have the upcoming 6-game road trip around the same time Vancouver's on their 7-game road trip. It may erode some of these records, right? So we'll see what happens there. Seattle, 12, 14, and 9 on the season. They also have 33 points, 471 points percentage for them. Again, 3 points behind the playoffs. They have an upcoming 6-game road trip too. So again, the Pacific Division is going to be going out on the road a lot in January. The MVP for me with Seattle's been Oliver Bjorkstrand. And I wanted to put Vince Dunn, but to me it feels like Dunn takes too many penalties for me to put him up as the MVP, although offensively he's been probably their best all-around and most consistent player. But again, just some of those key penalties, I was like, Bjorkstrand to me has probably been the MVP. Whereas for Calgary, and I realize now I didn't say the MVP for Calgary, but it's Christmas Eve, so nobody's watching this anyways. So, yeah, Blake Coleman. I'm going to go with Blake Coleman for Calgary because he has been their most consistent threat. Honestly, shorthanded goal, power play goal, whatever you need, Coleman's able to provide that for them. Honorable mention for them, I would think, would go to Sharon Govich as well. And it is interesting that the blue collar workers in Calgary are the ones that have been probably the most impressive this season. Might be a good identity for them down the road. The Oilers, 15-15-1, 31 points, but they are 500. So for the Oilers, they have some games in hand on teams they're chasing. But again, for teams that have teams in hand, that means they're going to have a busier schedule. So sometimes those games in hand come back to bite them. You have to win those games in hand. So 6 of their next 8 are on the road. They're in the middle of a 6-game road trip right now. So they've played 3 games on that road trip, 3 more to go, and yeah, 6 of 8 are on the road. And their road record is getting better. A couple of wins on the road most recently have helped, but yeah, it's something Edmonton's going to want to be working on. The MVP for me with Edmonton, I could have put Connor McDavid, but I thought, you know what? I'm putting Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman is, I think, still number 1 in the NHL when it comes to high danger chances. He's one of the best goal scorers in the NHL this year, and I figured, you know what? It doesn't hurt anything. They're 5 points out of the playoffs, but Zach Hyman's one of the reasons why they're not further out, and he's been really consistently good throughout that whole 31 games. McDavid, it took him a little while longer to get going. I understand McDavid's going to be the MVP by the end of the year. I just figured give it to Zach Hyman now. It's Christmas. Anaheim, 12-21 on the season, 24 points, 364 points percentage. They, of course, got off to that 9-6 start. It has been a tough time for them since. They are 2 games into an 8-game homestand, and so far the home cooking has not been working well for them. And then they go on a 6-game road trip. Their record is better on the road, but by better, it's mildly better. Now, going with a team that's 12 points out of the playoffs and picking an MVP, I went with Mason McTavish. Now, if you look at the plus-minus numbers, McTavish just kind of gets sort of ugly, but honestly, for the Anaheim Ducks, I don't know who else I would put as their MVP. Certain points I could have put Minchukov. I could have put Vetrano early in the season, but Vetrano's goal scoring right now has not been where it was earlier in the year. So I went with McTavish, but you guys can let me know your thoughts. And then there's San Jose, 9-22-3 on the season, 21 points, 309 points percentage. They're 15 points out of the playoffs. They have an upcoming 5-game road trip. With San Jose, they're better at home than on the road, although really at this point, it's just about staying in games, outworking the opposition. They have won a few road games that have shown that they're capable of doing that on any given night. And for an MVP, I went with Tomas Hertl. I feel like Hertl has been their best player throughout the season. He's easily the number 1 points producer. Honorable mention to Michael Granlund, of course. And then, you know, the question mark I have with the Pacific Division is really something simple. So we have these 3 teams here that are above the playoff line. At the end of the season, will any of these 5 teams down here be above the playoff line? The obvious pick would be the Oilers. The Oilers have underachieved so far. Very streaky team, and if they can get another winning streak, you know, that's sustainable going, then that's going to take them a long way, because it does feel like that wild card spot in the West is really kind of wide open. You have Nashville there, you have Arizona there, and while both teams have played quite well, I don't think they would be seen as teams that are kind of intimidating to those chasing them down. So the Oilers, I think, are the ones that are the most likely to chase down and find a playoff spot, but obviously Seattle was there last year. I think Calgary still has the makings of a good team there, and that leaves the Ducks and the San Jose Sharks as the ones who are basically the also-rans, the ones that are going to be outside of the playoffs when the playoffs roll around. But I don't think I'm saying anything that's going to make fans in those locales upset, because when one team's 12 points back and the other one's 15 points back, it's pretty obvious where things are heading for those teams this season. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. And yeah, I'll be doing this for each team today. I figure, you know what, why not? It's kind of fun. And again, I know it's Christmas Eve, but why not? We're at the Christmas break. And about about a month from the All-Star break, where I'll do some discussion on where teams are again. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.